Hi, I'm Arthur, and amidst my constant ramblings about the various space marines that are out there, I find that the topic I want to focus on more and more is the individual characters of each chapter. See, I have a goal when making my videos, which is to cover the broad strokes first, and then, when it inevitably becomes harder and harder for me to cover the very broad topics, I want to dial in my focus to cover more specific topics, something simple like that. Though I am not nearly close to running out of things to talk about by a long shot, I am going to cover some of my favorite characters today. Or rather, I'm going to be covering one, and some lovely folk from around the community are going to be covering others. I wanted to make another 3 interesting characters video in the same vein of the first one, where I had some of my peers show up to discuss characters they enjoy. So, I got some new lads on board this time, and this time we have a theme: Chapter Masters. Chapter Masters, for the uninitiated, are some of the most interesting and powerful characters of a chapter. Sometimes they are known for guile, sometimes they are known for pure martial combativeness, and sometimes they are just the biggest guy in the chapter. So, with that in mind, I have an interesting group of lads to start us off. So, I'll have them take it away with cute little title cards to divide each segment, and eventually I'll probably pop in, so yeah!
Thank you, Arthur. And so, by way of speedy introduction, I'm Tom.
I'm Lucas, or better known as Moots.
And I'm Aaron.
And I'm fucking crazy.
And we are the Astartes Anonymous team.
For our entry into Arthur's video today, we wanted to shine a light on a very special Chapter Master.
A Chapter Master that has been lucky enough to have a majority of his service set in stone amongst several books, taking part in some of the most iconic battles the setting has put forward over the years.
And that Chapter Master is none other than Careb Cullen.
Careb Cullen's tale begins on the feral world of Zybus Minoris, where he was taken from as a child to undergo augmentations to become an Astartes. Whilst much of his earliest days as a battle brother are unknown, we do know that his ascension through the ranks of the Red Scorpions was marked by an unwavering dedication to his chapter's creed of personal strength of mind and exemplary bravery.
One of the first grand conflicts that Careb Cullen would make a mark in was the terrible Siege of Varax. Though, at this point in time, Cullen wasn't yet a Chapter Master, but a veteran sergeant of the Red Scorpions' honored First Company. His actions in retaking the St. Leonis Gate would see him promoted from veteran sergeant to commander of the very same company.
Later, Cullen would be pivotal during the events of the Aphelion incident, where he and his men would accompany Inquisitor Solomon Locke and his retinue down to a secluded inquisitorial station on the planet of Beta Aphelion 4. Where the base was meant to be used as a center of research for the growing Tyranid threat in hopes to halve the rapid evolution of the Great Swarm.
However, not long after arriving, the Red Scorpions, Inquisitor Locke, and their accompanying guardsmen and tech priests discovered that the Tyranid menace had breached containment, swarming the base and leaving none alive. Though combat was minimal at first, those present quickly saw the appearance of greater Tyranid bioforms, including biotitans such as Haradans and Hierophants.
In light of this information, Careb Cullen and his Terminators received orders from Chapter Command to abandon their charge and evacuate alone. The Red Scorpion strike force would leave Beta Aphelion, Inquisitor Locke, and all of their allied Cadians and Elysians on the world to die. And in a lot of ways, Cullen was held personally responsible for this, and this act of intentionally leaving behind Inquisitor Locke severed what had been a long-standing, exceptional relationship the chapter had held with the Ordo Xenos.
50 years later, as the Badab War unfolds, the Red Scorpions would be called upon by the Imperium to quell the secessionist rebellion led by Loft Huron. However, at the outset of the war, the Red Scorpions were assigned the tedious task of launching counterattacks only upon secessionist raids on Imperial resource shipments by the Imperial Lord Commander of the war, Varant Ortiz.
This would change after the assassination of Verdant Ortiz, the commander of the Red Scorpions, as Ortiz attempted diplomatic means to come to a peaceful solution with the Badab secessionists. With the death of the Lord Commander, Careb Cullen stepped up and took charge of not only the Red Scorpions, but as the new Magister Militum, leader of the Imperium's war upon Luft Huron and his renegades.
Cullen would immediately sideline the Firehawks and in their stead bring even more Red Scorpions into the conflict. Now totaling 8 full companies, 2 battle barges and 4 strike cruisers, the Red Scorpions quickly matching the strength of other chapters that had brought their entirety to bear later in that conflict, such as the Exorcists, Carcharodons, Minotaurs and Star Phantoms. Over the course of the coming years would be largely responsible for the total suppression of both the Lamenters and Mantis warriors, utilizing the Carcharodons, Salamanders and other loyalist chapters present, including the Minotaurs, though as you might expect, Asterion Moloch and his men remained aloof to the chain of command.
And the rest is of course history. Carib Cole secured his name in the annals of 40k lore during Badab as one of the most incredible, resilient, and ruthless commanders in the setting, commanding many iconic Space Marine over the course of the war, such as Asterion Moloch of the Minotaurs, Valen Kal of the Sons of Medusa, Laius Isidon of the Raptors, and of course Tiberos the Red Wake of the Carcharodons. Carib Cole, tried and tested, is truly one of the greatest Space Marine commanders to have ever lived.
But Coln's story doesn't end there. As of the era Indomitus, Carib Coln continues to serve in the frame of the Leviathan Dreadnought.
Though sadly there's only limited information available on his interment, since GW is an unorganized collection of idiots.
You see, there was in theory meant to be elaboration on Cole's interment into the Leviathan in the unreleased Fires of Syraxis book.
However, Games Workshop ostensibly cucked Forge World with the onset of 8th edition and the introduction of the Indomitus Crusade.
And so, any plans to elaborate on his dreadnought status with, well, any elegance got essentially shoehorned into being a part of the Indomitus Crusade.
Where Carib Coln was unceremoniously mortally wounded by a powerful Tyranid bioform from High Fleet Kraken, dubbed the Great Beast of Sarum.
Hopefully, with a little bit of luck, we'll receive not only a better picture of the events surrounding his interment in the coming years, but also his endeavours as a Leviathan Dreadnought too.
And with that, we shall now hand you over to our good friend, the incredible Pancreas No Work.
Let me tell you about the one, the only, Marneus Calgar. Papa Smurf, Big Daddy C, whatever you want to call him, this dude is the premier chapter master of all the Space Marines. When Matt Ward says he's the spiritual liege of them all, I unironically agree 110%. Every other chapter master looks up to this dude, and if they don't, it's simply because they're jealous, because they know deep down they will never be an Ultramarine. His fit? Tight. His weapons? Double power fists, the better to ram his meaty claws up the ass of all those who would threaten the glorious realm of Ultramar. And the rest of the Imperium, I guess, but Ultramar is more important by far. Every single piece of artwork of this dude goes unfathomably hard, but the real kicker is this ancient piece of endless beauty. He's got dinosaur heads on his wall, dinosaur heads on his throne, weapons and armor and a pelt from some animal he probably killed himself. He's holding a piece of paper, no doubt fan mail from one of the many chapter masters who'd only wish to be as great as him, and he's squatted down in a pose that radiates pure monster cock energy. Look at that codpiece and tell me that Calgarius doesn't have a tripod. Marneus Calgar isn't hung like a horse, horses are hung like Marneus Calgar. You know how the Dark Angels and their successor chapters have that whole Unforgiven nonsense or are basically still a legion? 15% of all chapters are Angel successors. That's pretty impressive. If you weren't Marneus Calgar, that is. 50% of all chapters are Ultramarine successors, and the dude's so cool that he probably just has to ask any of them at random if he can borrow a Marine or 200, and they'll gladly say yes. The Black Templars, Dark Angels, and Space Wolves have to go around pretending they aren't breaking the rules, while Calgar just rolls up and asks politely and gets a legion for free. But it doesn't get to his head. He's a cool dude. He's helped out and been helped out by other chapters such as the Blood Angels and Lamenters, and he's been shown saving helpless guardsmen and tech priests from chaotic threats. Even though he's objectively superior to them in every way, he's humble. He'll listen to anyone, be they Inquisitors, Space Marines, or normal people like you and me, because he cares. And you know what he has? A Marvel comic. Is your chapter master important enough to get a goddamn Marvel comic? No. No, they aren't. And the list of enemies the big man himself has conquered and slain? Bigger and better than anyone else in the setting, just like Calgar himself. He's killed demons, aliens, he ripped the head off a Lord of Skulls, he's fought the Swarmlord and lived, and he's done the same with none other than Abaddon the Despoiler himself. He's a tactical genius, a strategic genius, and he's ready to put all that aside and just go to town on your stupid ugly face when push comes to shove. The only thing in the galaxy he hasn't beaten is an avatar of Cain, and if you show me any evidence to the contrary, I'm gonna come to your house and kick your— Marneus Calgar is the ultimate chapter master. He makes the traitor Primarchs look like utter tools, he makes half the loyalist Primarchs look like utter tools, and he's a shining example of what the blood of Rebute Gilliman is capable of. As long as Marneus Calgar draws breath, the Imperium will never fall. Truly, none can stand as tall as this Ultramarine.
Asterion Moloch, the Spear of Judgment, Satrap of the Daedalus Kerata, the Brazen Warlord, Bringer of Wrath, Executioner of the Adeptus Administratum, and the fearsome Chapter Master of the Minotaurs. An unusually bitter and paranoid Astartes, Asterion Moloch is known across the Imperium as an absolutely brutal tactician and silent dutiful executioner. He exudes an aura of raw contempt and death. So strong in fact, he reportedly made a Custody Shield captain tense in his presence at the possibility of an incoming engagement. While records on this legendary chapter master remain slim within the databanks of the Imperium, Moloch has been reported to have been lost in action in over a dozen separate accounts. Yet somehow, the chapter master always seems to return once his presence is needed once again. Some speculate he's more machine than man, having over 99% of his body replaced with massive bionics to make him serviceable once again. Others, who might also be known for distrusting or even openly judging the Minotaur's chapter, speculate that Moloch is nothing more than a line of existing Astartes, that through heretical implantation and mind wiping have been engrammed with Moloch's original characteristics and personality. When not being called upon his skills by the High Lords of the Administratum, Moloch spends his time at the center of a labyrinth within the assault carrier Daedalus Krata, eternally scanning and plotting hundreds of data feeds to perfectly calculate his chapter's next move. No matter the rumors and strange records that surround this terrifying Astartes, the Artificer Tartarus Terminator armored and alleged Custodian Spear-wielding Asterion Moloch is surely one of the most dangerous warriors to have ever been produced by the Imperium of Mankind. The perfect tool for the utter extermination of both Xenos species and renegade Space Marine chapters within the Imperial ranks. One of the greatest examples of Moloch's tactical might and cunning brutality was during the infamous years of the Badab War. The Minotaurs had been called in by the direct command of the High Lords of Terra to put an end to Luft Huron's bloody reign and open rebellion surrounding the Maelstrom. The rebellious tax evader had collected a multitude of chapters to fend off the attacking Imperials. Within these ranks, some chapters had found themselves at the wrong side of the engagement. Led on and kept in denial about what the truth of their Maelstrom rebellion was, the Lamenters tried to fend off the Minotaur assault. Now known as one of the bloodiest Astartes on Astartes battles in the more recent years of the Imperium, the Lamenters had been systematically cut down to less than 20% fighting force within just 17 standard Terran hours. Moloch had not yet shown his presence to the Council of Imperial Attackers, yet horrifying pig feats of the slaughter showed an individual of legendary might and bitter revenge. For all those within the Imperium, the Minotaurs led by this strange individual remain nothing more than a whisper among those that fear the wrath of either the High Lords of Terra or the leaders within the Adeptus Administratum.
The Raven Guard are often defined psychologically by a sense of guilt and self-doubt that can be reasonably considered irrational. On the positive side of this, you have a lineage of Marines that are always self-analyzing their own weaknesses to improve as people. But on the other hand, you have exactly what Gareth Arendi was going through before he became the chapter master of the Blackguard. Originally a normal battle brother, he would find himself using his own natural genius for tactical strategy to escape from the Battle of Istvan, despite already being lethally injured. Miraculously surviving through his own bravery and skill, he was rewarded with becoming the leader of the Shadow Wardens, which were the personal bodyguards of Corvus Corax. However, this isn't how he saw it. Stricken by the worst sense of survivor's guilt you could ever imagine out of not being able to rescue the Salamanders and Iron Hands he was fighting alongside, he would view himself as a failure to his legion, obliterating his self-confidence. His lows would only get lower until he made himself do an act that, while in line with his duty, also pushed this over the edge into suicidal self-hatred. The mad apothecary genius Fabius Bile, using his transhumans designed to hunt space marines, nearly slaughtered the Primarch. While Corax ordered Gareth to leave him, Arendi refused and stayed with his Genefather. While saving the Raven Lord's life, he would also damn himself in his own mind as a traitor, accepting the punishment of death should they survive. However, here he was even more honored, and when it came time in the Second Founding, the Shadow Wardens, as well as those closest to them, would go on to form the Blackguard. One could argue from his morality, his tactics, and his soul, the chapter master of the Blackguard is the true inheritor of the heart of the Raven Guard, even more so than Kay Van Shrike. I often compare the Raven Guard to the Bat family from DC Comics. If Kay Van Shrike is the Jason Todd of the family, then Gareth is without a doubt the Dick Grayson. He hits all the same beats as the original Robin to Corvus's Batman. He starts off as a loyal young man, more than happy to serve his father figure, followed by a Nightwing period of healthy rebellion. In his case, it wasn't really rebellion, but he viewed it as rebellion, and conflicting emotions, eventually settling on becoming his own hero who makes that same father figure proud. He even got a Nightwing-style costume change. He now has like a mostly white costume, and it feels a lot like the blue stripe that Nightwing had to some degree. It kind of comes out in the Astartes armor in that same pattern. I know that's the entirety of the Blackguard, but it's a very nice synchronicity to me. I like him because he's a competent human being, besides all of that. He's overcome the depression and self-doubt inherent to the mental flaws of the Raven Guard, while also retaining their morality. I really am a sucker for all the Raven Guard successor chapters, because one thing you'll notice when it comes to just any of them, and also it depends on your theory on the Space Sharks, but, the Space Sharks are what if Night Lords had Corvus Gene Seed, and the Knights of the Raven are what if Dark Angels had Corvus Gene Seed, and etc., etc. It's really a Marvel what-if comic. In the case of the Blackguard, ironically, I feel like they're the thought experiment with their tactics of what if White Scars had Corvus Gene Seed? Because even though they're sneaky, even though they specialize in guerrilla warfare, those hit-and-run tactics are done with tanks. I had to re-record myself saying this because I laughed my ass off the first time I said it, because it just makes me happy. I just like the idea of they're doing hit-and-run tactics with tanks and going as fast as possible with them. So they have that same need for speed, but it's how it truly is the "you do not see Tiberos" meme. It truly is. So again, that is the Raven Guard Nightwing. That is Gareth Arendi. That is my pick for this wonderful video and this nice collab that Arthur has taken time to put together. Good luck to the person next to me if there is one, and thank you to the person before me. So what they'll do is they'll sneak up on you and then drop a tank. Drop a fucking tank on you.
Last and probably least, if I'm being super honest about this, is me. And I'm covering a topic I hold near and dear. Now, if you follow me religiously, you will know that my favorite Space Marine chapters are Night Lords, Black Templars, and the Emperor's Spears. And since there is almost no lore for the current chapter master of the Emperor's Spears, we can't exactly be talking about them, right? Right? Nah, that's not how we swing on this channel. I'm here to make up ideas that make no goddamn sense and hope it sticks. So who is the chapter master of the Emperor's Spears, and why do I want to talk about him? Pretty simple. Arukatus is his name, and his title is the High King, which is essentially the kind of conglomerate title that the Emperor's Spears gives to their chapter master, but also the person who occupies the role as planetary governor, of which he is the planetary governor of Nemeton, the home planet of the Emperor's Spears. Reason being they have this different title is that they have been kind of cut off from McCrag and the entirety of the greater Ultramarines for the weirdest reasons. Well, a mixture of different reasons, rather. They have devolved quite a lot, if you could probably tell by the fact that every single mention of them in the lore says they are more or less a savage group of fuckers who have no shits to give for anyone. The short end of the reason why is they come from a very tribal society with very little technology and a lot of superstitious views. These views have never been kept in check as they had bigger issues to contend with, like, the Exilarchy, which is a giant chaos warband that is ravaging the entirety of their system. You have Tyranid invasions, other chaos chapters coming in, all that good stuff. So that, mixed with them getting into a fuckload of trouble during a larger war known as the Yukari Insurrection, it led to them refusing to ever set foot on McCrag again, or at least their chapter master of the time did. Basically, they felt they were being shown up by a different Space Marine chapter from the Gene Seed of Guilliman, the Aurora chapter, which ended with the current chapter master of the Emperor Spears demanding that they dedicate all forces to launch every drop pod they have in the center of enemy forces. They lost a massive chunk of soldiers, but won the war and kind of embarrassed the Aurora chapter by being stuck-up pricks. By demand of Calgar himself, they had to admit they were sorry, give supplies as some sort of penance to the Aurora chapter every so often, and also never do that again. The High King of that time decreed that Calgar can eat his dick, and he would never set foot on Macragge again. Also, side note, the rations they would deliver to the Aurora chapter out of spite were seawater and barely edible sea snakes that were local to Nemeton, because they are just assholes. So how does this tie back to the current High King Arukatis? He is a level-headed man who actually overturned this vow in order to repair relations with the Ultramarines. It didn't work because they were still kind of sore about everything that happened, but, you know, it's worth mentioning. And also, because he is the planetary governor of Nemeton, he is in control of this massive, wet shitball, because Nemeton sucks. Nemeton sucks. It's just very important for you to know that. It's a massive ocean world that is also a feral world, where there is maybe a single archipelago of safe land to live on, and that's it. It's also constantly torrential raining. His secondary title after the High King is the Swordbearer, and that's where I want to kind of end off here. I think it's interesting that he is referred to that because, you know, they're the Emperor's spears, not the swords. But it's actually a pretty interesting translation. The Emperor's spears do not actually typically use spears in combat. Sure, they have power lances from time to time, but it's not their main method of combat. The term is actually to refer to the Marines in the chapter as a whole. They see themselves as the spears that the Emperor himself will use to strike at the enemies of the Imperium. So him being the sword-bearer differentiates him and elevates his status as someone different from the rest of his chapter, but still a part of them. A good example of this being implemented in other chapters is for the Black Templars. A lot of them in lore don't actually bear the Aquila on their armor because they see themselves as the symbol of the Emperor's divine might. They do not need the Aquila to show their authority on the battlefield. There is also no art of Arukatis, by the way. He is just a silly fellow in the lore that had like maybe a few sentences in a book, 2 short stories, and a single index card you get for ordering the special edition book, which I got. I'd recommend reading the Emperor's Spears book. It's really good. It's one of those Aaron Dembski-Bowden books that are pretty solid. But that's all we kind of know about him. And with that concludes this video about 5 chapter masters that me and a bunch of other nerds think are cool. Did you like any of them in particular, or do you have specific chapter masters you like more? I was so close to covering Laius Isidon in this, you guys have no fucking idea. I am very grateful to everybody who showed up, as I mentioned, and I'm going to be putting links to their channels in the description of this video if you want to see their content. All of them are significantly more talented than I am, but as per the usual, let me know in the comments what you think about the chapter masters that we discussed today, or other chapter masters that you like. And also, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks to my channel members for supporting me, and if you want to support me as well as see content early or even see exclusive content, then become a channel member today. Thanks again for watching, and until next time.